Welcome in, and today I'm going to be discussing consistency. And I'm going to be discussing consistency in regards to mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And don't mind if there is an uneven angle in this video. It's because I couldn't place my phone camera on a completely flat surface because I'm recording this video in my car. So in any event, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're on my channel for the first time, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome as well. Make sure you show some support. And without further ado, let's get into consistency. First, I'm going to talk about why is consistency so important. Consistency is so important because that's how you can build the best. When the more consistent you are, the better you're going to be at building. The more fast you're going to be at building. The more stronger you're going to be at building. The more effort you're going to put into building, the more consistent that you are. The more inconsistent that you are, that's when you start to not build things up as much, not build things up as strong, not build things up as fast. And when it comes to being consistent, what does consistent means? It means to consistently do things in a manner that is one thing after another, and another thing after another, and another thing after another, and to keep going, and to not allow anything to push you towards being inconsistent, or to get you into or push you towards any inconsistent energies, because inconsistent energies can be are more linked to manifesting less, and also not being able to put in as much work in as maybe one should, as much work as maybe one would like to, as much work as you need to put in if you're being inconsistent. Whereas consistency, you're constantly putting in work. You never stop putting in work because you know what your goals are and you know what you need to do in order to put in that work. So consistency is key in regards to anything when it comes to mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, and knowing when the right times are to pump the brakes. When's the right time to, take a rest or take a pause or whatever that may be, if need be, if there is a need to. But other than that, you should be consistent in regards to your efforts that you put in mentally, the efforts that you put in physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Starting off with staying consistent versus inconsistent when it comes to mentally. Staying mentally consistent is like being on top of your mental state of being on top of your mental game no matter what is occurring, being on top of having those thoughts, having that strong mind constantly having that strong mental stability, constantly, even if you're going through times of instability or a mind that is, let's say, radical, or you can't exactly stay consistent, or you're going through, let's say, resistance when it comes to having that stable mind or having that consistent mental strength, that strong, stable mind, and that strong, stable mental state of being. Making sure that even through those times, you're staying mentally consistent. And what that means is, even if, like I said, you're experiencing that resistance there when it comes to mentally, your effort to constantly stay consistent and to keep putting in that work mentally, keep striving towards a mentally strong space, keep striving towards a mentally stable state of being, is going to be your effort that you can put in order to stay consistent when it comes to mentally. Once you find out, this is the way I want to construct my mentality, these are the mental forms that I am using, and these are the mental forms that I should mostly be using when it comes to what is beneficial towards whatever you need to get out of your mental state of being. The way that you need to construct your mental state of being is different than a way someone else may be able to or needing to construct their mental state of being. So being mentally aware of, this is what works when it comes to mentally, this is what doesn't work, and being able to tell, okay, what can I use in order to be able to be mentally consistent, to where I'm not one day I'm mentally stable, the other day I'm completely mentally unstable, another day I'm somewhat mentally stable, whatever that may be. As long as you're staying consistent when it comes to mentally, you're going to be able to stick with your top mentalities, stick with your most basically strongest mentalities, and by staying consistent, you can carry on that mentality through all experiences that you're in. By staying consistent mentally, you are not going to have to deal as much with being mentally unstable or being mentally unfit for whatever situation you find yourself in. And let's say sticking to things, that's pretty much consistency. Sticking to your mental values, which are, okay, if I do have a certain thought about this, or I have a certain thought about that, even if those aren't things that you want to be experiencing when it comes through your mental state of being, then being able to be like, okay, I'm aware and I know that I'm not going to allow this to stop my mental state of being. I'm not going to allow this to plunder my mental state of being. I'm not going to allow this to set my mental state of being off track. I'm going to use this to say, okay, that's a thought that I had. Okay, maybe it's not most beneficial to what I need to do in order to most benefit my mental state of being. So I can detach from that thought now, or I can detach from having any mental worries, or any mental stress regarding that thought or regarding that mental state of being. Therefore, it'll be much more easier for you to detach from those mental states of being that are keeping you in inconsistent energies, let's say, when it comes to mentally. Therefore, you can stay consistent when it comes to mentally, and staying and continuously applying that mental pressure or that mental stimulus for your mind to continuously grow and to stay consistent when it comes to expanding your mentality and continuing to explore mentally, continuing to learn and grow when it comes to mentally, rather than being inconsistent, rather than resting on certain spaces when it comes to your mental state of being, rather than resting on certain thoughts that you're having. Try to explore beyond that and try to make sure that you're expanding when it comes to how you use your mental state of being, how you're going about using consistency when it comes to your mental state of being, from each experience to each experience. And another thing that could help one become more mentally consistent is to say, okay, this is what, like I said before, this is what I do want to experience when it comes to mentally, this is what I don't want to experience when it comes to mentally. And just having that awareness is going to allow you to know, like, if something happens through your mental state of being, you're going to know, don't react to it or react to it, based upon if that's going to allow you to stay consistent and stay consistently strong and stay consistently mentally stable when it comes to being consistent mentally. So that's pretty much for mentally. I'm sure there's more that I can think of, but right now I'm just making this video in a little bit of a time crunch. But other than that, that's another thing right there. I'm staying mentally consistent. I could have, sat here and, I'm about to go into work, but I had the extra time that I needed to make a video. I had the extra space and time in order to be consistent. Be consistent on my list of things that I have to get done, my list of videos, my list of ideas that I have to record and to put out there on my channel. So just taking this time to say, no, I'm not going to just sit here and do something that maybe would be enjoyable or maybe would be relaxing or whatever that may be, because I've already had a pretty mentally stimulating, pretty mentally exhausting, pretty mentally taxing day. Instead of just doing that, I chose to be more mentally consistent. And I'm going to see how this plays out. Most likely this action of, playing out this mental strength and playing out this mental consistency to put out what I need to put out and to do what I need to do when it comes to mentally, and of course physically, emotionally, and spiritually, I'm going to reap those benefits. I'm going to reap that effect that I have on my mental state of being, on my physical and emotional and spiritual state of being, throughout whatever I'm going to experience afterwards. After I turn off this video and after I close out this video, I'm gonna go have to put in more work, and I'm gonna have to go put in more consistency. And that just goes to show that if you can break down your states of being and be able to be aware of them and say, okay, I'm going to be consistent in all of these, that's going to be a great way to structure your reality and to structure through and stay consistent rather than inconsistent through the experiences that you're going through. Alright, so that's it for mentally. When it comes to physically, staying consistent could be consistently putting yourself in the right space, putting yourself in the right area, the right location that you need to be in at all times. Physically knowing what is right for you and what is not right for you, and knowing what spaces that I'm in that are leading towards me being more and more consistent. What space am I going into physically that's benefiting my consistency, that's benefiting me being able to be consistent, rather than spaces that are not, let's say, constructive or not beneficial towards consistency and being in that consistent space. What places and what spaces and what physical actions do I need to do in order to most be in a consistent space and be consistently putting in that work when it comes to physically? This could be anything from your actions, doing things like, just for an example, working out. Consistency is key with working out. If you want to see results with working out, whether that be losing body fat percentage, whether that be gaining muscle, whether that be recompositioning, your body in general, whatever your goals are when it comes to, let's say, fitness, or when it comes to health, when it comes to your physical state of being, consistency is key. And being able to be consistent and not turn off your consistency just because you're tired or just because you think you need a rest. You can get that rest, but stay consistent in that amount of rest you're getting, so that all at one time you're not like, oh, I need to just take this big rest and I just can't go back there again, or I can't stay physically consistent and I need to be in some sort of stagnation or some sort of physical space that is not necessarily geared towards moving on and geared towards consistently being consistent. And I'm probably going to say that word and probably say consistent about 100 times in this video, which is funny, but here we go, I'm going to stay consistent. I'm not going to let anything come in between me and my goals when it comes to being consistent. So anything, like I said, when it comes to those goals, when it comes to being consistent physically, health related, fitness related, consistency is key. The more inconsistent you are, the less results you're going to see. The more inconsistent you are, the less you're going to be towards your goals when it comes to staying physically consistent. Staying physically consistent is like putting in that work regardless. Constantly putting in that work, constantly, if you have, like I talked about before when it comes to mentally, if you have physical resistance that you're dealing with, whether that be hard work that you have to continuously put in, whether that be dedicating a lot of your time, dedicating a lot of your space to certain things when it comes to physically, just keep pushing forward. Don't let anything get in your way of being consistent. Don't let anything stop you from carrying out your goal, carrying out what you have to do, and that work that you have to put in when it comes to physically. Think about it like this, like someone that I see that is walking across this parking lot right now, they're just walking, and they're a person that is used to this, but they are always consistent and they're always getting better and better at what they do, which is when it comes to the way that they travel, when it comes to physically, that happens to be a form of walking. And when I see them going from one location to another, they are not stopping and taking a break. They're staying consistent. They're not being inconsistent by walking this way, then walking this way, then walking this way, then walking this way. No, they're going from point A to point B. And if they need to go somewhere else, from point B to point C. Not wasting any time, not being inconsistent in that form of physically traveling. And like for myself, I'm being consistent. I could sit here and I could say, oh, I was inconsistent for the last video I made prior to this one was 2 days ago. Yet, I look at the work that I had to put in, the consistent work outside of just my videos that I had to put in. And of course, these videos are important to me, but I make that a priority. And if I needed that time to do something else in order to be consistent and successful in some other areas, then that's just what I need to do. But me being able to realize that, okay, I got to get back to the grind. I got to get back onto my consistently putting in that physical work, putting in my videos, uploading these. Physically, I'm uploading them. Of course, it goes online and whatnot to YouTube, but I'm physically here putting in that work. I'm not physically just sitting back, being inconsistent right now, and not manifesting, not putting in the work when it comes to physically. And after I put in this work, I am consistently in this video pushing out the knowledge, pushing out the wisdom in order for one to learn something, in order for one to be able to take something away from my video. And not only that, but I can use this as a learning experience. I can use this in order to be more consistent because I'm putting in this work when it comes to physically. I'm, after this, going to be able to have my takeaway from this, my takeaway from putting in this consistent work, and let's say that can help me improve. That can help me be more consistent when it comes to mentally, because maybe I'll learn something from what I did. Maybe I'll learn something from that physical work that I had to put in. Maybe that'll help me emotionally be more consistent, because now I'm more emotionally stable. I'm more emotionally confident in my ability to put out the information, my ability to stay consistent in doing so. That could also help me when it comes to spiritually, by being consistent in my spiritual faith in myself, by proving to myself, being that testimony to myself that I do have that strength when it comes to spiritually. And that work that I'm putting in is showing me that I am on that right path when it comes to spiritually. I am staying consistent when it comes to that path regardless, and continuing on to do so. Whatever that may be, whatever you need to do, stay consistent through it, and you can work towards that. Whatever it is that you have to do, whatever kind of work you have to put in when it comes to physically. And like I said, physically, after I do go ahead and I put in this work, I'm going to be going into an environment, like I said, where I'm going to have to put even more time, even more physical actions in. And whatever those actions may be, I have to be okay with that. I have to be willing to be consistent in those actions and not sit here and say, oh, if I have to do this, then I'm going to shut down mentally, or I'm going to shut down emotionally, or I'm going to feel detached from my spiritual presence, or whatever that may be, just because I'm going somewhere where that might not be my main goal, or that might not be my main focus, or whatever I'm putting in my best interest, or whatever that may be. Of course, there's things that I'm seeing that have to be done. There's sacrifices that have to be made in order for you to stay consistent in your goals and other things that you have to do. So being able to be aware of that is definitely going to help me be consistent, and it's going to help me to push forward. I'm going to be going through these next, it's going to be probably 6, 7, 8 at the most hours of hard work, hard putting in that consistency, putting in that time. And I'm not going to be inconsistent in anything like that. And I just told, I was talking to someone and I was like, make it as much hard work as possible, and that's only going to make me go harder. Make the work that much difficult, make that work that much more consistent for me, and that's only going to pressure me to continuously keep going. I'm not going to change and I'm not going to be inconsistent when it comes to my efforts I put in physically, my efforts I put in when it comes to mentally, my efforts I put in emotionally and spiritually. Because to tell you the truth, I've had enough of that. I've had enough of being inconsistent, even if I've dealt with that in any areas, even if I've dealt with that in whatever areas that may be. I am going towards being consistent, and that could be, okay, physically you weren't able to do something as good as you maybe thought you were able to do something. Okay, that's fine, but guess what? You're gonna have to be more consistent now. You're gonna have to go through that resistance and deal with working through that, and deal with doing what you have to do in order to stay on that path, in order to stay consistent. Mentally, maybe, oh, you weren't sharp enough, or you weren't mentally prepared enough, or you weren't mentally aware enough. Okay, maybe you went through that type of resistance. Go back or don't go back, but yeah, go back to being consistent when it comes to working towards improving that way. If you were feeling a certain way, oh, something happened and you weren't able to be as consistent as possible and it made you feel a certain type of way emotionally, taking responsibility for the way that you felt and not putting that onto others and being like, you know what, I'm already running hot today, or I'm already emotionally on edge, or whatever that may be, or extreme, or whatever you know yourself to be. As long as you have that awareness of yourself, you can be aware and be able to vouch for that emotional state of being you're in. And that emotional state of being can teach you, like, hey, that was an inconsistency right there. Use this as a moment to teach you to become more consistent when it comes to emotionally. You know, realizing that that's not the end all be all spiritually. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever you had to deal with when it comes to you being consistent and you had to experience some resistance there on that path, realize that spiritually, at the end of the day, you're still here to experience. Your experience isn't over. Your spiritual growth is not ending here. Your spiritual expansion is not ending here. So continuously stay consistent. Stay strong on your path when it comes to spiritually. Alright, so we reached the halfway point in this video, and if you're still here, drop a like. Good to know that you're still watching my video and that you're at least getting something from this. And also, why am I putting this out and information like this? Because if someone wants to come along and comment something, maybe they learned something, maybe they heard me say something where they can tell me their perspective, and then therefore each one can teach one, and that person's perspective can help me to learn something more about my path, or learn something more about anything when it comes to mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Alright, being emotionally consistent is really all about emotional stability. Making sure your emotional state of being is in check. Making sure your emotional status is stable, that it is strong, and that it is not toxic, or that it is not a hindrance towards anything, or anyone, or any place, or anything of that nature. Being emotionally consistent could be as much as consistently staying confident about yourself, consistently having those emotions of I'm confident, consistently I'm strong, consistently feeling that you're in the right place, consistently feeling that you're doing the right thing, consistently knowing that you're in the right state of mind, you're in the right state physically, you're in the right plane of existence, the right spiritual path and purpose that you're carrying out when it comes to spiritually. Having that sureness in yourself and having that sureness in your emotional state of being, and being that emotional rock for yourself and being consistent in that area, therefore you can now, if you need to, be that strength for someone else, be that strength for a different place or thing, you know, in order to be that rock when it comes to emotionally stay consistent in that way, emotionally stay balanced. A big part of staying consistent emotionally that we talk about is staying emotionally balanced. making sure you're not leaning more towards one way than the other, making sure that's basically what balance is when it comes to getting a perspective of what it could mean by just an example. Being emotionally strong, being emotionally resistant towards whatever it is you're going through, and your consistency that you experience when it comes to emotionally can, like I said, help support, help structure your thoughts that you're having, help confirm, okay, you have a thought that is something that you need to confirm, and you're like, okay, I'm thinking this, but do I feel this as well? Be able to have that emotional consistency to confirm that thought and to confirm with that feeling that you have, okay, yeah, I can confirm that's actual fact, that's actual truth. When it comes to the mental, when it comes to physically, being able to be like, you know what, I'm emotionally consistent in whatever space I'm in, whatever, let's say that's a physical space, or doing certain actions when it comes to physically. Staying consistent emotionally can support you in your physical state of being. And then of course emotionally, like I said, staying balanced emotionally is going to help you to stay consistent. It's going to help you to not be down on yourself necessarily, not be inconsistent emotionally, where, let's say, like I said, when it comes to one of the states of being prior, one day you feel like this, or one moment you feel like that, one moment you feel like another. Basically having that consistency. Don't be wishy-washy when it comes to emotionally. You know, no one wants to be around someone who in one moment they're fine and then the next they're not. So knowing like, okay, I feel the way that I feel, be consistent in that way. Don't be inconsistent in that, because otherwise you're not going to be able to stand on what you feel. You're not going to be able to be real about what you feel, or real about your consistency when it comes to emotionally. So being emotionally consistent constantly, regardless of what happens mentally, spiritually, physically, having that emotional consistency to be able to push forward and move along through your experiences is a big part of being emotionally consistent. And when it comes to spiritually consistent, spiritually being consistent is about being a strong spirit. It's about having strong values spiritually, strong spiritual morals. It's about sticking to those strong spiritual morals, sticking to those strong spiritual values, and sticking towards being a strong spirit at all times. Whether you're dealing with something mentally, continuously be a strong spirit. Continuously hold up strong morals. Consistently hold up strong values when it comes to spiritually. Whether you're going through something when it comes to physically, hold up those strong morals. Hold up those strong values. Be a strong spirit when it comes to spiritually, regardless of what you're dealing with when it comes to emotionally. Consistently hold up those strong morals. Consistently be a strong spirit, and consistently, like I said, I was going to use that word a lot in this video, consistently being a strong being, regardless of what you're dealing with emotionally. Consistently being, and I'm going to say this twice, but why not reiterate it? Consistently be holding up strong values spiritually. Consistently holding up strong values when it comes to morals as well. So being consistent spiritually, like having that spiritual faith, having that spiritual power in yourself to not be inconsistent, to not feel as if you're lacking emotionally, to not be in a space physically where you don't think you're spiritually protected, to be experiencing things mentally, whatever that may be, where you're not spiritually in your power. So staying in that power when it comes to spiritually is part of staying consistent, and staying consistent as overall, like I said, is going to help you to build. It's going to help you to achieve your goals mentally. It's going to help you build physically. It's going to help you achieve your goals physically. It's going to help you build emotionally. It's going to help you achieve your goals when it comes to emotionally. It's going to help you to be strong spiritually. It's going to help you build spiritually. It's going to help you build your spiritual system. It's going to help you build up your spiritual power. And not only that, but it'll also help you by staying consistent to build that spiritual perspective. That's it for this one. I'm out.